Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to Opera 101 with the Cleveland Opera Theater. My name is Stephanie Ruozzo, and I'm an Education and Outreach Associate with the Cleveland Opera Theater. This Opera 101 is our Monday through Friday daily series where everybody, people of all ages, can chat about some little fun new thing about opera, and we really do want everybody to chat about it. So please, if you have a question, comment at any time, please just drop it in the comment box below, and I will respond in real time as soon as possible. And if you have any questions you want to discuss further, please feel free to email me anything at sruozzo@clevelandoperatheater.org. That's SRUOZZO at clevelandoperatheater.org. And please do submit it to us. We're going to get you the information that you want to know during each Opera 101 session. So today, what I really want to talk to you guys about is the idea of courtly art versus public art. So a while back, Megan talked to you guys about how operas today are funded, how opera companies today operate on a business model, what is supporting the arts that we all love and get to experience. But I want to take us back a little further again, being the history buff of the team. So how did all of these business models start? Where did they come from? And how did the business of opera work at the very beginning of the genre? Well, first off, remember when we talked about the Medici wedding in Florence and the Gonzaga sponsorship of carnival festivities in Mantua that were responsible for the first operas of the early 1600s? So what we see in common is a royal or noble court. These original art forms were sponsored by noble families, and they were specifically meant to glorify noble families. In fact, all of those like heroic gods and larger than life figures that we talked about before, those were meant to be specific references to the nobles that popped up in every city, whether they were visiting or whether they were the ruling family of that city. Hi, Donna. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us today on Opera 101. And these operas that were staged at every court reflected not only the noble family, but they were commissioned for specific occasions like a wedding celebration. And that's why we have all of these mythical stories that revolve around festivities and gods. Invitations to these operas were status symbols, and if you were rich and famous enough, you got invited to the court of these nobles to witness these grand spectacles. Remember, this is before electric lights in every opera house. In fact, they weren't even opera houses. They were the houses of these noble families that had specific halls. So without the electric lighting, what you're seeing is that the lights aren't dimmed. They're just a bunch of torches and candles all around lighting up the entire opera house so that everybody can see everybody else. And being an audience member at one of these courtly festivities was just as important as being on the stage. It was pretty much equivalent. So the visual is actually, I'm going to say, more important than the music. For as much as that might seem odd to opera lovers today, it was more important to see something or to be seen than it was to hear something. And we see this philosophy extended to what's on stage. So we've got crazy, spectacular machinery. Again, not electric, because that wasn't an option at the time, but the more money you could spend on creating machinery, elaborate scenery, painted by the best artists you could possibly commission, the most beautiful costumes sewn by the most fashionable, couturiers of any city. And here's my favorite part, horse ballets. Yes, horse ballets, where they actually trained equestrian riders and they choreographed these equestrian routines. So it was just grand spectacle of all kinds going on. The bigger, the more impressive, and there was a more is more philosophy. But then last week too, we talked about this move northwards to Venice when we talked about the first bel canto. And what was going on in Venice then, the business model kind of changed as that first bel canto was emerging. So we saw the emergence of the impresario, and that comes from the Italian word impresa, meaning a business. Literally, it means entrepreneur, somebody who runs a business. So an impresario organizes and schedules an opera season. They are in charge of what gets put on stage and when and by whom. So essentially, the impresario was picked by an authority like the government or the noble family that ran the city. And then they were allowed to take a percentage of the ticket sales based on whatever operas they were staging and however many tickets were bought. So they were hired by the noble families to run the opera houses because the costs of court operas just got out of hand. The more spectacle they tried to lavish on the people, the more even these crazy rich nobles realized they couldn't finance everything together. So in order to maintain the spectacle that we know and love, they actually hired businessmen to run the theater and to schedule things, to hire the right musicians, and to publicize events too. They're closest to what we might think of as a producer today. And the impresarios had very strict rules they had to follow based on the government or noble family that was hiring them. They had to provide a specific number and type of operas for a given season. They even had restrictions on who to hire. They might have to hire a certain person that the nobles really liked. They might have to commission a composer that was really in favor politically at that time. So even though the impresario was in charge of the business, it's not like he had free reign over everything at the theater. And the first theater to open up that ran on this model with an impresario working on behalf of an authority was the Teatro San Cassiano in Venice in 1631. It was the first public theater, and it was the first to run on this model of basically subsisting on ticket sales. Your success as an opera company depended on how many tickets you sold. That sounds familiar even today. And audiences no longer needed to wait for an invitation from the noble family. They can just buy a ticket whenever they wanted. Now, politics were put to the side of opera, and we could actually kind of focus more on the art and what pleased listeners, which is a large part of that first bel canto developing. The prettier the music you could make, the more tickets you would sell. And so the idea of the first bel canto emerging and the switch from a courtly system to a public system are really interlinked. And the first company that we see taking advantage and building themselves on this model were the Fabi Armonici, which literally means the musicians of Apollo, or Phoebus. So Fabi, Phoebus, Armonici, musicians of Apollo or Phoebus. And that was an opera company that began touring Italy. So they didn't have a house they were associated with. They were just a group of performers that went all around the Italian peninsula during the 1600s. And the first documented performance was in Piacenza in May of 1644. So they modeled their business structure partly on the Commedia dell'arte tradition, and those performers who supported themselves by traveling and giving shows. So the Commedia dell'arte, like the people with the fun masks and the crazy improv, that's basically the business model that got adopted by the Fabi Armonici, and they're bringing this business model around the Italian peninsula. Within a few years, so by 1647 to 48, this term, Fabi Armonici, had become a generic one, referring to any number of traveling opera companies that would sponsor themselves through giving shows. Hi, Allison. Thank you for joining us. Good to see you. And these companies then not only toured throughout Italy, but their popularity kind of spread. And the first public theater we see subsisting on ticket sales outside of Italy was in Hamburg, Germany. It was the Goose Market or Goose Market. Yes, you heard that right, Goose Market. So it was the first public opera house outside of Italy, built in 1678. And It was built on a plan by Duke Christian Albrecht, along with his court composer, Johann Tyla. So we see people of other countries now, transalpine companies, have kind of absorbed the popularity that was going around. And this Gansemarkt, this public theater, was huge. 2,000 people on the ground floor alone, 4 levels of boxes and galleries, and the stage had 15 sliding wings. Any theater people like myself know. I mean, for those of us who did high school and community productions, 4 or 5 wings is a nice size. 15 wings is crazy. So they could do the spectacle with all the money they'd rake in from 2,000 seats plus boxes and galleries. And soon after Hamburg, Hanover, Brunswick, and Leipzig all followed, although Hamburg was still the most successful of these models. And so now that practice has spread all over the world. That's how opera has survived, and that's how we can enjoy it today. And that's why it's important to support your local institutions. You guys are the reason opera survives. Opera is for you, and opera is all of our domains. So go and run your domain, everybody. Enjoy it. If you had fun today or any day, please do join us and subscribe to our Facebook page so you can get all of our news updates and posts. Please check out our website, clevelandoperatheater.org, and you can sign up for our mailing list then. And please do join us for tomorrow's Maestro's Corner edition of Opera 101, and we'll see you then. Thank you, guys. Bye.